In the annals of human drama, few spectacles are as compelling or as devastating as the downfall of a titan. A figure accustomed to wielding immense power, to shaping narratives, to orchestrating an empire, suddenly finds himself stripped bare, not by the force of his enemies, but by a rupture from within his very core. What happens when the meticulously constructed foundations of power and persona, built on decades of carefully curated image and unwavering public support, crumble? What do you do when the people you believed were bound by blood, by unbreakable loyalty, by a shared history, choose a different, unexpected path? A path of truth, even if it means abandoning you in your most desperate hour. In a federal courtroom in the heart of the city, a space designed for the cold, unyielding pursuit of justice, a different kind of drama was unfolding. It was a drama pulsating with the quiet hum of anticipation, but beneath that hum, a palpable undercurrent of unease. Here, Sean Diddy Combs, a music mogul whose name was synonymous with innovation, extravagance, and an almost mythical command over the entertainment landscape, faced not only the grave accusations of the state, but a profound, personal crisis. He was accustomed to dictating every beat of his life, every lyrical flow, every public appearance. But on this pivotal day, he would be confronted by a silence more deafening than any public outcry. A decision that would not only send seismic shockwaves through the legal world, but would brutally tear the carefully woven fabric of a public image, revealing the raw, devastating truth beneath it all. Just moments before, the atmosphere had been thick with the familiar, almost suffocating tension of a high-profile trial nearing its climax. Every day had brought new revelations, new legal skirmishes, and new layers to the complex narrative surrounding one of music's most enigmatic figures. Today, however, was different. Today, the air crackled with a unique expectancy. The defense team, their expressions a mix of practiced composure and underlying strain, were poised to unveil their most compelling character witnesses, individuals meant to attest to Diddy's reputation, his standing in the community, his very essence as a man. Lawyers huddled, whispering final instructions, their gestures sharp and precise. Reporters, seasoned veterans of countless courtroom dramas, hunched over their notebooks, pens poised, anticipating a strategic maneuver designed to sway public perception and shift the momentum of a trial that had become a national obsession. But then, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. A nervous shuffle from the defense table. A hushed, urgent conversation between a lead attorney and his junior. And then, attorney Marcus Bennett, usually a picture of unshakable confidence, of meticulously prepared composure, emerged. He moved towards the judge's bench with an unusual, almost hesitant gait, his shoulders appearing slightly more stooped than usual. This was no ordinary procedural delay, no routine request for a sidebar. A pin-drop silence, sudden and absolute, descended upon the courtroom. It was the kind of silence that precedes a storm, a quiet so profound that it seemed to absorb all sound, all breath. Every eye in the courtroom, from the seasoned judge, whose gaze was sharp and discerning over her spectacles, to the most junior clerk, could sense it. They could feel the tectonic plates of the trial beginning to shift beneath their very feet. Something fundamental was about to change. Something irreversible. Diddy, who until this very moment had maintained an almost impenetrable veneer of calm, a stoic indifference to the daily barrage of accusations and legal maneuvers, abruptly rose from his seat. It wasn't a movement of defiance or assertion, but one born of sudden, raw instinct. His gaze, which usually held a calculated intensity, fixed either on the jury, his legal team, or the prosecution, now darted erratically to the rear of the courtroom, to where his twin daughters, Jessie and Delilah, were seated. And in that unguarded, unscripted moment, his carefully cultivated indifference shattered. It crumbled, revealing the stark, chilling vulnerability of a man watching his lifeline, his ultimate shield, slip irrevocably away. His hands, previously resting calmly on the table, now clutched the edge, knuckles stark white against the dark wood. He didn't look at his lawyers, who were frantically going over their witness list. His world had narrowed to the two figures in the back row. All Diddy could feel was a sudden clutching at his chest, weak, quick breathing, as he realized his own girls had left him defenseless. There was no announcement, no prepared statement, just Diddy. Something had shifted for Diddy, who had remained calm throughout the trial up until that point. Perhaps it was the sight of the twins taking their seats at the rear of the courtroom instead than at the defense table. Perhaps it was when he saw that even loyalty to family has limits and he had exceeded them. Perhaps it was the realization that the meticulously crafted persona of a caring parent had publicly shattered. Diddy had had enough of acting, whatever that may have been. He sat there, not as a famous man, but as a parent whose daughters had chosen well. The courtroom was unprepared for Diddy's response when the defense counsel revealed that their witness list would need to be adjusted owing to unexpected family matters. With a voice that was unusually timid, uncharacteristically hesitant, Bennett addressed the bench. "Your Honor, we must address the matter of our witness schedule with the bench." A brief, hushed sidebar discussion ensued, veiled from the public gallery by the solemnity of the bench itself. It ended with the judge nodding slowly, her expression unreadable, and Bennett returning to his table, his shoulders slumped. The air in the courtroom crackled with unspoken significance, a tangible sense of foreboding. Why? Because what transpired next was no mere legal strategy, no calculated maneuver in the intricate dance of jurisprudence. This was something far more profound, far more human. It was the brutal culmination of a deeply personal, agonizing internal struggle that had been unfolding behind the scenes for weeks. It was, in essence, a daughter's final, unyielding moral decision. Bennett's voice, now measured but devoid of its usual authority, resonated through the stunned courtroom, each word landing with the weight of a hammer blow. "Your Honor, the defense must change our witness roster. Jesse and Delilah Combs will not be appearing as originally scheduled." The collective gasp was not just audible. It was a physical sensation, a wave of shock washing over the assembly. Every head swiveled in unison, drawn by an invisible magnet to the two young women in the back row. 17 years old, poised and composed, their faces bore serious, yet undeniably determined expressions. They stared straight forward, their gazes fixed on a point beyond the courtroom walls, not at their father, not at the spectacle unfolding around them, but into a future forged by their own conviction, their own integrity. Unbeknownst to the frantic reporters gathering like vultures outside the courthouse, their microphones thrust forward, their cameras flashing, clamoring to understand the latest legal twist, the most devastating blow to Diddy's defense had just been struck. And it came not from the relentless prosecution, not from an unforeseen piece of evidence, but from his own blood, from the very core of his family. Diddy's body betrayed him immediately. His composure, maintained with such fierce discipline through weeks of grueling testimony, evaporated. His breathing became ragged, a desperate, shallow gulping for air, as if he were being choked by an invisible hand. He instinctively reached for his tie, clutching it with whitened knuckles, trying to loosen the constriction around his throat. The carefully crafted facade of the self-assured music mogul, the unyielding patriarch, the doting father, it crumbled right there, in full public view, a mosaic of image and reality shattering into irreparable fragments. This was not merely shocking. It served as a cautionary tale. To truly grasp the monumental weight of this moment, one must first understand the cornerstone of Sean Diddy Combs's public identity. His meticulously cultivated, almost sacrosanct image as a family man. For decades, Diddy had masterfully woven a narrative of himself as a devoted, loving father to his 6 children, born from various relationships. This was not merely a private facet of his life. It was a public performance, a carefully constructed persona amplified across social media and mainstream media. Lavish birthday parties, grand graduation celebrations, and idyllic family holidays aboard luxury yachts were commonplace, meticulously documented and shared with millions. Jesse and Delilah, born in 2006 to the late model Kim Porter, held a particularly central place in this carefully crafted public display. They were frequently positioned by his side, embodiments of his paternal devotion. After Kim Porter's untimely and tragic passing in 2018, Diddy further amplified this role, publicly stepping into the void left by their mother. "I am now a full-time father," he announced to reporters, his voice tinged with a carefully managed grief. "It's a role I embrace, a promise I made to Kim." This image of the grieving, yet resilient, single father became not just personal, but a crucial component of his public relations strategy in recent years. It served to soften the sharper edges of his reputation as a ruthless business whiz, to humanize the formidable mogul. Red carpet events, carefully staged Instagram postings, and candid-looking family photos featuring him and the twins garnered immense, positive press. As Diddy's legal challenges began to mount, culminating in this high-stakes trial, his defense strategy seemed strikingly simple, almost foolproof. Portray him as an honorable, upright family man whose own children would testify to his unimpeachable character. The twins were listed among several character witnesses the defense intended to present. Their testimony meant to paint a vivid, intimate portrait of a loving father, a mentor, a pillar of his family and community, directly counteracting the prosecution's narrative of a cold, heartless businessman. But as the trial wore on, as the relentless tide of evidence poured in, something fundamental began to shift. The prosecution's case, meticulously built and presented, started to chip away at the carefully constructed image Diddy had presented to the world, and more crucially, to his own children. Whispers from within Diddy's inner circle, discreetly leaked to those in the know, suggested an escalating, almost unbearable tension between the mogul and his daughters. At 17 years old, on the cusp of adulthood, with their own identities, their own moral compasses, and their own ideals beginning to solidify, Jesse and Delilah started to raise tough, uncomfortable questions regarding the increasingly damning accusations leveled against their father. These were not the questions of naive children, but of young women grappling with profound moral dissonance. The undeniable breaking point, according to sources privy to the inner workings of the Combs family, arrived with the testimony of a former associate of Diddy's. This witness delivered evidence that was not only profoundly damaging but, more crucially, directly and unequivocally contradicted the accounts Diddy had given his children about his business practices, his relationships, and his personal conduct. The twins, present in the courtroom for this harrowing account, as they had occasionally attended the trial, were observed leaving visibly frightened, their youthful faces etched with a dawning, horrifying realization. As children, they internalized certain narratives about their father. A close relative reportedly confided to the press. They saw him as a hero, a protective figure. Hearing those narratives directly challenged, with irrefutable evidence, was devastating for them. It wasn't just a legal challenge. It was a personal betrayal of trust, a shattering of their reality. The foundation of their world, built on their father's words, began to crack. The night before they were scheduled to take the stand, to stand as character witnesses for their father, Jesse and Delilah reportedly engaged in a lengthy, profoundly emotional conversation with their godmother. She was a trusted confidant, a loyal friend to their late mother, Kim Porter, and a woman who had known the girls their entire lives. The precise details of that conversation remain, understandably, under wraps, shrouded in the intimacy of that shared moment. But the next morning, the outcome was clear, delivered with a quiet finality. Their lawyer notified the defense team that Jesse and Delilah would not be giving their scheduled testimony. Attorney Bennett, their own defense counsel, made a desperate effort to sway their decision, stressing how profoundly it would affect their father's case, how crucial their testimony was to his freedom, his future. But their response, delivered with a straightforward yet inflexible resolve, cut through his pleas. "We can't say things we no longer believe are true." This was not the rash, impulsive decision of capricious teenagers seeking attention. On the contrary, those close to the situation attested that these were young women agonizing over a deeply moral dilemma, weighing familial loyalty against their burgeoning sense of personal honor, against the undeniable, unsettling truth they had witnessed. The struggle had been internal for days, a visible torment, culminating in this excruciating decision to step down as witnesses. Their decision to sit in the rear of the courtroom, instead of their usual place behind the defense table, became a silent, powerful symbol of the emotional chasm that had opened. As Bennett delivered the devastating news to the court, the twins sat with an almost unnerving composure, their clasped hands the only betraying hint of their inner turmoil. For them, this was not an act of treachery, but a painful acceptance that they could no longer endorse a narrative they had come to mistrust. Diddy found far more hurtful than any evidence from ex-business associates the public desertion of support from his own daughters. In front of a jury that could only speculate as to its significance, it was the disintegration of the family guy image he had painstakingly built. The defense's morning began with the expected call, Jesse and Delilah Combs to the stand. But instead, Bennett stood awkwardly before the court. "Your Honor, there has been a change to our witness list. We will not be calling Jesse and Delilah Combs at this time." The judge, peering over her spectacles, demanded, "Counselor, these witnesses were central to your planned defense as outlined in your witness list. May I ask the reason for this change?" Bennett hesitated, a throat clearing, then revealed the truth. "They are unavailable at this time, Your Honor." Prosecutor Sarah Mitchell, sharp and relentless, sprang to her feet immediately. "Your Honor, the witnesses in question are clearly present in the courtroom. If they're being withdrawn as witnesses, the jury has a right to understand why." Bennett caught the eye of the judge. "Counselor." After a moment's hesitation, Bennett replied, "Your Honor, Miss Jessie and Miss Delilah Combs have exercised their right to decline to testify as they are not under subpoena, but were voluntary character witnesses. We must respect their decision." A ripple of shock vibrated through the courtroom. After bending forward to speak something to his lawyer, Diddy abruptly stopped, his expression turning from shocked disbelief to increasingly alarming signs of physical pain. The prosecutor, seeing her opening, persisted in her inquiries. "Your Honor, given that these witnesses were characterized as providing essential testimony about the defendant's character and family life, central elements of the defense strategy, their withdrawal seems highly relevant." This was considered by the judge. "Mr. Bennett, were alternative arrangements considered, such as a deposition or written statement?" It was clear from Bennett's reaction. "We explored those options, Your Honor." The witnesses declined all forms of testimony. As the debate raged on, Diddy's health visibly declined. His breathing became labored, a desperate, shallow gulping for air. He fumbled with his tie, unfastening it, and shakily gulped water from a trembling glass. His anguish was noted by the judge. "Mr. Bennett, is your client in need of medical attention?" Before Bennett could respond, Diddy lurched to his feet suddenly, wobbling ever so slightly. "I must communicate with my daughters," he said, his voice quivering with a raw desperation. "Please, I need 5 minutes with them." Without saying a word, the judge shook her head, a clear refusal. "Mr. Combs, please be seated. This is not an appropriate time for interrupting with the words, 'They don't understand.'" Diddy, in an extraordinary violation of judicial etiquette, demonstrated just how much his composure had crumbled. "They've heard things out of context. I need to explain." The judge's voice, strong and commanding, cut through the chaos. "Mr. Combs, you must sit down immediately or you will be removed from this courtroom." With his gaze locked on his children, seated steadfastly in the back row, Diddy slowly, heavily, sunk back into his chair. As the court officials advanced towards him, they stared forward, fixed on anything other than their father, and did not move an inch. The court granted a brief break of 15 minutes. With his breathing still labored, Diddy was escorted to a side room as the court adjourned. He was ordered to have his vitals checked by a court medical officer. According to reports from within the courts, the twins, who were accompanied by their godmother and a family attorney, were seen huddled together in a secret conference room during the break. The weight of their choice, the profound burden of their conviction, was evident on their youthful faces. When court started again, Diddy seemed pale and somber, but he had physically recovered, his initial panic now replaced by a chilling resignation. Keeping their distance, a chasm now visibly separating them, the twins went back to their seats in the rear of the courtroom. Bennett came back to the bench, his shoulders visibly heavier. "Your Honor," he announced, his voice lacking its earlier conviction. The defense would like to call our next witness, Mr. James Reynolds. A longtime business acquaintance, a man of commerce not kin, took the stand as the substitute character witness. Unfortunately, it was too late. The absence of Diddy's daughters, the very people who were supposed to testify on his side, to humanize him, sent a strong, undeniable message to the jury. A number of spectators noticed that the music mogul hardly looked to be paying attention as Reynolds gave testimony on Diddy's philanthropic endeavors and financial prowess. Looking back to the daughters, whose quiet resolve now screamed more than any defense they could have offered, his gaze continued wandering to them. The twins' choice to recuse themselves as witnesses wasn't made in a vacuum. Testimony and evidence began to fit together during the trial, painting a picture of Diddy as someone who is control-obsessed in every aspect of his life, not only as a demanding businessman. As the defense battled to recover from the morning setback, this subject resurfaced during the afternoon session, during the cross-examination of Reynolds, the substitute character witness. The prosecution's Sarah Mitchell, sharp and incisive, asked Mr. Reynolds, "You've testified about Mr. Combs's business practices and charitable work. In your experience, how does Mr. Combs typically respond when people disagree with him or refuse his requests?" Reynolds moved awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable. "Sean is particular about how things are done. He has high standards." "High standards?" Mitchell asked once again, her voice laced with skepticism. "Would you say he expects complete loyalty and compliance from those around him?" "Objection, leading," Bennett signaled, springing to his feet. "Sustained," the court pronounced. Mitchell changed the question, unperturbed. "In your observation, how does Mr. Combs respond when his expectations aren't met?" Reynolds paused, a visible struggle on his face. "He can be disappointed, forceful in expressing that disappointment." Mitchell repeated, "Forceful? Can you give the jury an example of this forceful expression of disappointment?" Reynolds made the connection to what had happened earlier in the day apparent as he recounted an instance involving a music video director who had been publicly scolded, humiliated even, for going against Diddy's ideas, for daring to deviate from his vision. This was a man, it became chillingly clear, who was used to having command over everything around him, including the stories spoken about his own family. People who were present at Diddy's trial testified about how he needed constant supervision of his public persona, company, and associates. According to testimony from former workers, there were stringent non-disclosure agreements. Meetings included the collection of phones, and anybody who disobeyed were subject to sanctions. Playbook existed. Earlier in the trial, a former assistant had stated, "Everything had to follow his vision, his rules. Deviation wasn't tolerated." The witness said that the individual meticulously planned his whole public and private life. As part of that plan, he meticulously altered his social media accounts to show himself as a doting parent, as if he were the one writing the stories of his life. For Diddy, the twins' decision to step away as witnesses was a first. He was suddenly unable to direct his own family's tale, and the story he had built up around them refused to include them. Reporters witnessed Diddy and Bennett engaged in an angry, whispered discussion during a short lunch break. The body language was evident, even if they couldn't hear the words. Diddy was making a strong, emphatic gesture towards his girls' seats, and Bennett was shaking his head strongly, a silent, grim confirmation of the inevitable. Bennett went to the bench for another sidebar session as soon as court reopened, his face already proving what many had assumed. The twins would not be making amends or having a last-minute change of heart. Diddy looked to be losing interest in what was happening as the afternoon testimony progressed, and the topics covered included company operations and philanthropic contributions. His famous concentration and meticulousness, which had established his empire, were conspicuously lacking. On the contrary, he seemed preoccupied, periodically turning to look at his children, who remained calm and aloof, their faces impassive. Beyond the formal evidence, the courtroom dynamics revealed a narrative of a real-time family split, a young woman's moral dilemma playing out on a public stage, and a father's dawning acceptance of the fact that he cannot control everything. Witnessing the unfolding of this family drama gave the jurors knowledge that no witness could have given. Instead of taking the witness stand to defend their father, the twins stood silently in the courtroom, their quiet defiance speaking more than words ever could have said. A longtime business colleague spoke as the defense's last witness, discussing Diddy's entrepreneurial spirit and his dedication to fostering Black-owned firms. As the court day drew to a close, although the testimony was well-grounded, it failed to evoke the strong emotions that the defense had evidently anticipated from the twins' presence. The courtroom corridor became the site of what witnesses said was Diddy's breaking point during the last recess before closing arguments were planned. Diddy approached the twins as they were getting ready to depart with their godmother and lawyer, with the eyes of the court security guards fixed on them. "Please, just give me 5 minutes," he pleaded, his voice betraying his customary power, now thin and reedy with desperation. Diddy was stopped in their tracks by the godmother of the twins. A strong, unyielding, "This isn't the time or place," came out of her. "They've made their decision. They're my daughters," Diddy said, his voice getting louder, losing all semblance of control. "They don't understand what's at stake here." And then it was Delilah who spoke, her voice low but audible to those around, imbued with a quiet strength. "We understand exactly what's at stake," added Jessie, her voice equally firm. "That's why we can't do it. We love you, Dad, but we can't say what you want us to say. Not after everything we've heard." As Diddy's face turned somber, a mask of anguish forming, the security detail drew nearer. People watching were worried he would really lose it for a second. "Your mother would never have allowed this to happen," he said, his voice thick with grief, a last, desperate attempt to invoke an absent authority. Neither of the twins spoke up, but their godmother stepped forward, her voice icy with subdued rage. "Don't you dare use Kim that way. She would have protected these girls at all costs, even from you." Multiple reporters and court attendees saw this raw, public discussion, and it was widely seen as the moment when Diddy's defense plan and the carefully constructed image of familial togetherness he had portrayed to the world finally broke, utterly and irrevocably. Upon the return of court, it became clear to everybody that Diddy had undergone a profound transformation. The self-assured swagger had vanished. He no longer communicated with his lawyers in a clandestine manner. He sat utterly still, his gaze fixed ahead, detached, almost catatonic. He was a man at last coming face to face with his own powerlessness. Bennett concluded by making an argument that was well-reasoned in theory but failed to evoke any strong feelings, a dry recitation of Diddy's cultural and commercial achievements. A perfunctory list of career highlights replaced the emotionally charged offense that had been supposed to culminate in the moving image of caring daughters endorsing their father's character. Unlike usual, Diddy did not nod or make any expressive facial movements throughout Bennett's closing argument, which is how attorneys normally get their clients to connect with the jury. He gave off an air of being reclusive, withdrawn, as he dealt with the intense public humiliation he had experienced, a humiliation far greater than any legal verdict could inflict. Bennett finished his case when the judge said that the prosecution will present their final arguments the next morning. Without pausing to look back at their father, the twins got to their feet and made their way out of the courtroom, their backs straight, their resolve unshaken. Diddy stood by as they departed, his face betraying him, every line etched with profound sorrow. His head dipped into his hands, a gesture of complete, utter surrender, a moment immortalized by courtroom sketch artists that would subsequently grace front pages across the country. The father's reaction betrayed his deepest sorrow, the loss of his children's confidence and support rather than that of a man preoccupied with legal strategy. Gathered in the corridor as the courtroom cleared, legal experts started reevaluating their earlier verdict forecasts. According to one analyst, the defense suffered a major loss when the twins refused to testify. This was because their silence, their steadfast refusal to speak, was the most devastating character testimony that could be given. The courtroom was at capacity the next morning, packed with anticipation. The unwillingness of the twins to testify had been reported overnight, leading to widespread conjecture over the case's outcome and the witnesses' potential outcomes. The unraveling was complete. The true crime was in the quiet, undeniable truth spoken by silence itself.